Hey, hey, hey. Happy Thursday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, interestingly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everyone. Tonight is Thursday, April 16th, 2026. This is live show 1311. Zoinks! If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out it's super casual. Just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop role-playing game news. And then I will usually talk about a topic related to our hobby, which is what I'll be doing tonight. Because we're going to talk about what makes a role-playing game adventure old school. Now, we're not necessarily saying an OSR adventure. We're talking old school vibe. And there are a few tenets of old school adventures that if you don't have it, it's probably not going to be an old school sort of tale. So we're going to get into that. And of course, I'm going to welcome folks to chime in with their thoughts as well. Now, of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to see here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And then, of course, because this is a live show, there is chat available. Now, you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least an hour before you can take part in chat. But if you check off that box, you want to say howdy, maybe get a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my absolute best to respond. First out the gate tonight is Captain Finity Time Travel Police. Keith Ulu's also with us, as is Danny Gable, Matthew Blackwell, and well known as Cave. And I would not be surprised if the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D is lurking in the shadows as our chat moderator, she of the glittery banhammer. So you just get a hint of that glitter before that bam! The hammer comes down. Hammer time. Not really. So welcome, everybody. So last night, some storms in the area. I know there were a few people in chat who were a little concerned if there were tornado warnings in my neck of the woods. There were not, at least none that I was aware of. Usually I can hear the sirens go off from down here. But hopefully everybody else out there that was experiencing bad weather made it through in one piece. Fingers crossed on that. I see that Pete Strakulich is also popping on in, and yes, Miss Sarah D is with us this evening. Welcome. All right, so shall we dive on into the news? Because campaign builder Pirates and Plunder has launched on Kickstarter, I've got the latest from Kobold Press. This expansion for 5e D&D and Tales of the Valiant brings all the action of nautical adventures and major looting to your tabletop game. It includes PC options that ensure your heroes feel right at home in any sea-based 5e campaign or setting. These options include 8 swashbuckling subclasses, including the Shanty Bard, the Privateer Fighter, the Gun Mage Sorcerer, and the Seaborn Witch. 3 wave-touched lineages. Behold the shark-like sea dragonborn, the rapscallion rat folk, and the return of the deep ones, dwellers of the abyssal depths. 4 hardy heritages. Shape your origins with stories like those of the seafarer heritage, and make your life by wind and sail, or the deep folk heritage, a character born below the waves. There are 7 freebooting backgrounds. Prepare your heroes to face the storms and cannons with backgrounds that play into classic Buccaneer tropes, including the trading skills of a merchant mariner, the blood code of a pirate, or the keen eye of a treasure hunter. Detailed guidance for nautical-based backstories so each player can craft characters perfectly tuned to the havoc and peril of a pirate-themed campaign. With expert guidance, craft seafarers and cutthroats that play to genre tropes, and develop morally gray heroes who run the edge between redemption and damnation. You'll also find new spells and rituals to battle the creatures of the sea. But it's not all player material. Beyond all of this, you'll also find Game Master options. It's a sea full of gaming booty. Pirate and Plunder includes a bounty of GM-facing tools to help you craft thrilling adventures, scurvy foes, and foreboding lands rising out of the fog. These include black powder rules, wield pistols and rifles from the decks and shore, with the burst mechanic to deliver incredible damage to your foes. New shipwreck escape rules. Run for the top deck against the encroaching water or flame in chase-like mechanics to turn every sinking ship into a thrilling encounter. There are 25 curses, diseases, and hazards. New options to plague your players with a bounty of brine-marked hazards, as well as expanded ship combat. Dust off the ship combat system from the Book of Blades with a host of fresh rules tailored to your campaign's particular brand of daring do. You'll also find 5 infamous pirate lords, including the fiendish Dahul, the otter animal lord Admiral Hallen, and dread pirate Queen of the East. You'll also find within 20 legendary islands. Plot your course between Cyclopean ruins, the Mechadron Lighthouse, and the Fell Isle of the Dead, and much more. Random tables galore to help you become the terror of the sea, or to hunt them down. Create treasure maps on the fly with the Treasure Map Generator. Build your story and reputation with the Infamy system, or craft your own pirate ship of legend with vessel upgrades, weapons, and magical accessories. There is a short 1.5-minute Kickstarter video, so let's give it a peek.
The sea doesn't care who you were, only who you dared to become. From Kobold Press, Campaign Builder Pirates and Plunder, a complete toolkit for bold, swashbuckling adventures in your tabletop games. Face black pirated duels and dangerous ship battles, or legendary islands and dread pirate lords. The hold is backed with ship combat rules, infamous pirate crews, legendary islands, new monsters, seafaring gear, rich plunder, and treasure maps begging to be followed. Players can build heroes shaped by salt and steel, swashbucklers, gun mages, shanty-singing bards, sea witches, and more. Bring your sea battles to life with the Pirates and Plunder map folio. Vibrant harbors, coastlines, and pirate strongholds ideal for swift setup and seamless integration with the Pirate Haven City. With all this booty and a crew that won't back down, all you need is a fast ship and a cunning plan. Raise anchor, roll dice. The black flag flies again.
The Kickstarter project just sailed right on past its funding goal in its first few minutes. You can reserve a hardcover copy of Campaign Builder Pirates and Plunder with the PDF for a pledge of approximately $51. Strangely enough, I don't know what was going on. It's showing Canadian dollars. Kobold Press is here in the U.S. So I don't know. I've never seen Canadian dollars as far as the default for a Kobold Press Kickstarter, but sure enough, that's what was showing up. If you want to just grab the PDF alone, You can make a pledge of approximately $26 to score that. And this is through May 15th. There are some other options out there as far as pledge levels. There's the map pack, which has 10. I believe they're double-sided maps. I have shown you some of these campaign builder map sets in the past. They are pretty big, pretty cool. And this, I should point out, has a pretty quick turnaround because expected fulfillment is this October. Very nice. Sweet. Always good to see new stuff coming out from our pals over at Kobold Press. Speaking of our friends, let's talk about our friends over at Trollord Games, because the Adventurer's Backpack is now available in print and PDF for Castles and Crusades. And here is the lowdown. Take only what you need. There you go. For some reason, I think my mouse battery is dying down here. I'll have to see if I can swap it out a little bit later. We shall see. Anyway, take only what you need. The Adventurer's Backpack contains a mountain of content for you and your player character. It includes 20 classes, including the Warlock, Blade Dancer, the Feral Halfling, Elf Mage, and more. And each is complete all the way up to the 24th level. The cornerstone of any good character lies on their back. What they carry into the primeval wilds and darkest dungeons keeps them alive. In this tomb, want to be a tome, you'll find 34 pre-generated backpacks, from medical kits to overland adventuring backpacks. These packs are complemented by expanded equipment lists. Create new characters that combine the powers of several classes or breathe life into old characters long used to the campaign trail by switching classes. The Adventurer's Backpack unleashes the power of multi-classing, enhanced classes, dual classes, and switching classes. That's right. School is in. And in the end, you'll want a guard dog, a simpler hand-to-hand combat system, counter spells and spell duels, an introduction to plane travel. And I'm not talking about, airplanes here. And more. The Adventurer's Backpack is the resource you've been looking for. Expand your Castles and Crusades game like never before. The 224-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $39.99. You can grab it with PDF for $49.99, or just score that PDF alone over at Drive-Thru RPG for $19.99. And we will be getting a chance to take a peek at this very shortly, because it is not shipped yet, but the order is in. So I will be reviewing the Adventurer's Backpack, as well as the Adventurer's Companion. There's also a new adventure, which I think was the adventure that they ran at last year's Gary Con. It was an exclusive. So I've got that coming, as well as I think there's another Air Day region guide. I think that's with that as well. Peace Trackledge said they had to grab this too. Matthew Blackwell says, I just got that book. It's so good. Sure, just rub my nose in it. I'll have it soon enough. That's fine. That's okay. Kathy Evans is with us, as is Martin 7W and Troy Cornelson. Welcome to you all. Good to see you once again. So yes, Matthew Blackwell points out they've got 2 new expansions for Air Day as well. Let's talk about saving you a little bit of money on role-playing games, because there is a new offer featuring the Fellowship role-playing game from Liberi Gothica Games. I've got the deets on the bundle of holding deal. Adventurer. Bundle of Holding is resurrected for a second time. Their June 2020 Fellowship bundle, featuring the Liberi Gothica Games tabletop fantasy role-playing game of heroism against world-shattering odds. Fellowship. In Fellowship, one player becomes the overlord bent on world destruction. The other player characters form a coalition of heroes who undertake a perilous journey to save the day, adapting the simple and flexible apocalypse angel. Yeah, okay. It's the apocalypse angel build. You know, you've heard of it. You know all about that. That's what they call being tongue-tied. Adapting the simple and flexible apocalypse engine system, Fellowship lets you enact your own epic adventure a la The Lord of the Rings. This bargain price revival once again presents the 2019 second edition of Fellowship, plus all three of its supplements, along with many of Liberi Gothica's popular Dungeon World playbooks. For just $9.95, you'll get all three titles in this revived offers starter collection, which has a retail value of $36, as DRM-free PDFs, including the complete Fellowship second edition Book 1 core book and Book 2 Inverse Fellowship, along with a set of Dungeon World alternative playbooks with the Mage, the Priest, the Templar, and the Artificer. And if you pay more than the current threshold price of $18.16, that was at least a little earlier this afternoon. It might be like $18.20 now. You'll level up and also get this Revival's entire bonus collection with 6 more titles worth an additional $42, including Fellowship Book 3 in Rebellion and Book 4 Generous Fellowship, along with 4 more Dungeon World playbooks: The Cultists, The Dashing Hero, The Spellsword, and The Witch. These savings run through April 28th. I remember hearing good things about Fellowship when it came out. I have never had an opportunity to take a peek at this. I haven't really had a chance to take a look at many of the Powered by the Apocalypse games out there. I did have a PDF of Dungeon World at one point. That's why I'm kind of excited. Second edition of Dungeon World. But I will say that Powered by the Apocalypse is a very unique system, not necessarily easily grasped by what I would say are experienced game masters. I think the more experience you have with running role-playing games, the trickier that Powered by the Apocalypse games are, because you're just so used to approaching certain things in a certain way. And the Apocalypse engine changes that up fairly radically. I would think if you were new to role-playing games, you could probably take to a PBTA game pretty quickly. I don't know, just my brain fart I'm throwing out there. Sometimes in the Winter is with us. I just recently started playing Dungeon World and my group liked it. So that Fellowship bundle dropped with great timing. Nice. Ollie Sykes is with us. Welcome aboard. Let's move on to our next news piece, because the latest supplement for Trinity Continuum has arrived from Onyx Path Publishing. And here's what I know about gadgets and gears. Talents in Trinity Continuum are capable of amazing feats of super science. Through advanced application of medicine, science, or technology, talents can push their inventions beyond the boundaries of modern knowledge. Whether crafting serums and drugs to enhance themselves, cloning or engineering creatures to aid their heroic tasks, or constructing devices to augment their capabilities, scientifically inclined talents take their fields of study to new horizons. Trinity Continuum Gadgets and Gear expands and streamlines the rules for super science, making it easier for story guides and players to create inventions for use in their games. In addition to the new rules, this book provides examples of the new rules being used and a collection of new gear ready to be placed into any Trinity Continuum game. Furthermore, this book introduces advanced gifts, which allow talents to access new heights of power. Gadgets and gear includes updated and streamlined rules for super science, over 30 new inventions, including compounds, devices, organisms, and artifacts, over 30 advanced gifts, expanding the boundaries of possibility for talents in the Trinity Continuum. The 40-page standard color softcover with PDF can be had over at Drive-Thru RPG for $11.99. If you want to just snag the PDF, you can certainly do so as well for $4.99. Always something cooking from Onyx Path Publishing. It's either for Trinity Compendium, Exalted, or Scion. We see a lot of Scion stuff. I wish we saw a little more. It came from the releases. Or like what was it? How did I always do the voice? It came from beyond the grave. Ollie Sykes says their son, who's 13 years old, loved it. It was his first foray into role-playing games, and it got them hooked. Story over rules focus is good for newer players. And yes, we have another Asian beetle flying around. If you weren't watching last night, one landed on me and bit me. I'm like, what the hell? I thought it was a ladybug, right? I'm like, I've never been bitten by a ladybug. Now this sucker just clamped on. I had to finally go, bam! I see Dark Reeker is with us again. Says, powered by the Apocalypse games, vary wildly in quality. When it first took off, a glut of content came out, and some of it, well, I used to think I hated PBTA back then. Yes, quite a bit. Well, it's like everything, right? Shadow Dark gets popular, and there's a lot of third-party content out there for Shadow Dark. Some very good, some not so good. See that with games that just get hot. I'm sure we'll see more of it for like Daggerheart. I would take a guess. Agile Monk is with us in chat. Welcome aboard. Good to see you once again. So, Ollie Sykes is talking about Ironsworn. A lot of people dig that. So, yes, Coco B is also popping on in and said, yep, probably an Asian lady beetle. Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, it's one of those Asian beetles. They're biters. Yeah. So it's funny. It was crawling on me. If you were watching last night, it was crawling on my hand as I was showing off something. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, wait a second, is the thing biting me? Feels like it's biting me. And I take a look and I'm like, you little son of a... All right, let's move on to our final news piece because there's an interesting looking new fantasy survival horror role-playing game, which caught my eye, and it's from InCharacter Games. And here's the skinny on of Hearth and the Harrowing. Build your hearth, brave the wilds, face the harrowing. During the Harrowing, a relentless blight swept the realm. The corrupted remain, but heroes rise to fight back. Grab your musket and rapier. Aragian, that's the game world, needs you. Let's say it's Aragian. It's time to take back what was lost. Adventure, settle, defend. When your adventure is done, the work is just beginning. Return to your hearth with your followers and build a settlement of your own. Grow your reputation to attract new villagers and bolster your defenses to protect your community from the encroaching corruption. But beware, as your hearth grows, so too do the forces of the harrowing. Evil stirs in dark places. Prepare to defend your hearth. Within this core rulebook, you'll find a complete tabletop role-playing game powered by Chaosium's basic role-playing universal game engine. How's about that? Rules for adventuring in the corrupted wilds of Irigian. Settlement and follower mechanics to build your hearth. There's the Western Wilds, a hexcrawl region ready to kick off your journey into the Blightlands, and the ruins of Karis, an adventure site where you can claim as your own, kickstarting the building of your hearth without actually kickstarting something. The 192-page PDF is available right now over at Drive-Thru RPG for $29.99. Sweet. I thought this looked pretty cool. It's supposed to also be inspired by old school revival games. I had run across that as well. I was like, okay. And it uses the good old basic role-playing system, which also powers, I don't know, like Call of Cthulhu. Ollie Sykes says, I need more duct tape for these Asian beetles. Yeah, I was taking a look. There's ways to make little traps for them in that. If they were ladybugs, I'd be like, okay, no biggie. But they're not. So I don't know. I don't think they're really helpful. They're probably, invasive. Anyway, but of Hearth and the Harrowing looks pretty cool. Looks pretty interesting. So I wouldn't mind checking this out. It is only in PDF as of right now, though. All right. So that is it for the news tonight, as Agile Monk makes a $9.99 super chat. Saying lots of good stuff on display tonight, Jeff. Yeah, especially me. No. Sometimes in the Winter says, speaking of Powered by the Apocalypse, big sale over at Magpie Games. Grab themselves the Pirate game, plus a few very niche games like Bluebeard's Bride. Yeah, I had heard that Magpie is going to do their own system now. So they are not going to be using the Apocalypse engine, which I thought was kind of wild because the vast majority of their games do utilize the Apocalypse engine. So maybe they're planning on coming out with a bunch of new editions of their games. Ollie Sykes says, alas, the Awful Sea, Ironsworn, and the Silt Verses have been their favorite PBTA games. Agree, your mileage and quality can vary greatly. Some of it is total pish. Let's see. Grimy Son of Groin is with us, says not old school. Nope, Powered by the Apocalypse is not old school whatsoever. But we're going to get into old school in just a few moments. But did want to mention, you heard me point out that we've got some cool stuff available over at Drive-Thru RPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit, say, Drive-Thru RPG, Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault, any of the numerous One Bookshelf sites, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. I get 5% of most items as a commission. And all those commissions really do add up. Help keep thegaminggang.com around. Truly does. Truly does. Of course, if you enjoy the video, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. If you're hanging out in chat, give it the little heart or thumbs up or whatever little icon you want to use. Isn't there like confetti or something? I don't know. I don't think I have access to hit the different. Well, maybe I do. Hang on. I do. All right. So we got the 100%. Yes. We've got the cone of confetti, smile. We got like what the hell's going on? Look, 100%. So yes, well, yeah, there, because Agile Monk just used the 100. So do that. And if you're watching on mobile, maybe use some of your hype points. You're not using them. You're just sitting there. Sprinkle a few on this. But of course, if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, there are a couple of other ways to go about doing that as well. First, you can make a one-time donation by way of PayPal. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. And it is Asian Lady Beetle free. Nice. No crunchy snack. That'd be kind of gross. Take a sip and you'd be like, what is that? Yeah, you can also become a member of our Patreon. That's right. You're going to find links to all of that down in the show notes. Also in the show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up. So be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. Of course, during the live streams, I always like to say hello and give a shout out to our Patreon members. We had a brand new Patreon member, Scott Adams. Welcome aboard the Patreon, as well as our established members getting tips of the cap. We've got Ben Oathwaite, Kaval, Kevin R. Smith, Talzek, Sean O'Donnell, Herman Lutman, Gustavo Cavaldo, Kevin King, Game Cat, RPG Munch, Tier 2 DM, Far Adrift, Pete Strakulich, Dan Webb, Tessie Trekkie, Agile Monk, The Madman, and Flint Fireforge. Thank you all very kindly for supporting the Gaming Gang by way of Patreon. Agile Monk says, yes, I use my hype points. You get 3 sets of hype points a week. Cool. Nice. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about what makes a role-playing game adventure old school. And we're not necessarily talking about old school revival or old school renaissance, because you can have modern adventures that have an old school vibe, an old school mentality to them. And they're not built using, a retro clone or an original OSR. It wouldn't be original OSR, an original D&D game as far as its baseline for its stat blocks and things like that. You can still have adventures that are old school and have new school mechanics for them. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And I do welcome everybody in chat to chime in with their thoughts as well. But before we happen to do that, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
wasn't humanly possible. But now you can have all the power and excitement of Nintendo right in the palm of your hand. Introducing Game Boy. It's portable, it's in stereo, and its games are interchangeable. Plus, Game Boy comes with the outrageous new game, Tetris. And for head-to-head competition, use the revolutionary video link and blow your opponent away. Game Boy, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, portable power.
I can get you Wilkins coffee for a price.
I wouldn't touch it.
There's no future in an attitude like that.
In a dark and distant age, a lone warrior with mystical powers,
Master of the beast.
and the creatures he commands rule his strength. Kodo and Podo, his thieves, and Shirok, his eyes. They will challenge the forces of a brutal tyrant.
Did you actually believe that you and your flock of peasants could overthrow my kingdom?
But the battle for the fate of their world
With the threat of such a weapon, I could rule unopposed.
will lead them to another.
The ultimate power awaits you, my lord. The dimensional portal, the doorway to your ultimate triumph.
To the most barbaric land that time has ever known.
This is Los Angeles. Most awesome place in the universe.
Yo, Darth Vader, what is this, some kind of movie set?
You gotta get yourself some fresh thread. Rock and roll, baby. Whoa.
How come a clean-cut jungle boy like you is hanging out with a creep like this?
This geek is really trying to get the bomb.
The world is mine! You must pass me first.
Mark Singer returns in Beastmaster 2 through the portal of time.
Did that trailer make any sense? I don't think so. Although I have to laugh. Beastmaster's sitting there and it looks like it's, I gotta be honest, never saw the movie, but it looks like it's like a police captain. He's sitting in his office and he's talking and he's just lounging back. Like, yeah. Wouldn't you think he'd be like, his mind would have snapped by being transported to this whole other world? Sometimes in the winter said, I love the first movie. Never got to see that. Well, whatever that was. Tessie Trekkie has joined us, says that's so 80s. Daddy Gable said, almost forgot how bad that was. Thanks for the reminder. Gonna tell you. Yeah, I aim to please. Ravenclaw says, dear God, they made a Beastmaster 2. The first was a classic. Another movie I haven't seen. Yeah, I know. People bust my chops. They're like, really? You never saw that? Were you playing D&D? I'm like, yeah. I was playing role-playing games back then, yes. I don't know. Just never. Maybe I saw it on VHS or something, and I just don't remember it. So Kivu says it made about as much sense as Yoda's VCR instruction manual. That's pretty funny. Weren't there more than just the two with the Beastmaster movies? Weren't there like 4? I don't know. Hey, I'm surprised nobody's out there going, hey, you know what? We got to reboot that franchise. Genuine Maddie C is with us in chat. Welcome. I think somebody else had popped in. Yeah, there we go. Mark Edwards. Good to see Mark once again. You. Oh, and I see Age of Adventure is also popping on in. So let's get down to our topic tonight. Because we've kind of had an old school week, right? So I thought yesterday, why not have our topic just about talking about adventures and what makes an adventure old school. And it doesn't have to be like an original module for Dungeons and Dragons to be old school. It just has to have certain tenets to make it old school. And that's what we're going to talk about. And of course, once again, I do welcome your thoughts, those of you hanging out in chat. And of course, if you only have an opportunity to watch this on Memorex, by all means, share your thoughts in the comment section. I do my best to respond to all the comments. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed that, unless it's like a mean, nasty one. Then I might actually respond to it, but not in the way that you would hope. Ravenclaw says, no death saves. Save versus death. Tessie Trekkie says they've never seen most of the original series Star Trek. Yet Trekkie is in their nickname. Epterix is with us. Might be a first-time visit in chat for them. Welcome aboard. I just don't recognize the nickname. Said those movies were cheesy even then. Yeah, but we gobbled it up. Like I tell my nephew Cameron all the time, you know, we had to wait 3 years. Once Star Wars came out, we had to wait 3 years for Empire. Then we had to wait 3 years for Return. Everybody nowadays, you get Star Wars every week, sometimes multiple Star Wars. So we weren't picky and choosy. We were like, oh, okay, oh, that looks like it might be up our alleys. Let's go. And be like, oh my God, that was awful. So anyway, so let's talk about adventures. And while I'm talking about adventures, we are actually going to take a peek at some adventures. Now, these don't necessarily have anything to do with like any particulars that we're going to talk about. I just figured I'd give you something to take a peek at as we are talking. So, Yeastmaster, the leavening, says Danny Gable. All right, so first off, we'll be flipping on through Wicked Witch of the Woods, which is designed for Shadow Dark. This is, if I remember correctly, this is from RPG Ramblings publication. No, it's not. It's from Runeforged. Damn, I should have looked at that earlier. Hey, what can I tell you? So, one of the key tenets, in my opinion, of an adventure that's going to be old school is going to be the adventure is not balanced. Now, the adventure might be designed for a particular level range, or if the game maybe doesn't use levels, maybe it's more along the lines of something which is like an experience level of the player characters or even the players and the game master. So sometimes we'll see sell sheet information talking about role-playing game adventure, which is designed for newcomers to the hobby or for experienced players and game masters. And we don't necessarily get like a level range for them. Like as an example, like a Call of Cthulhu adventure would be, because Call of Cthulhu doesn't use levels. But we will not see balance. So we'll see encounters with creatures that might be kind of a cakewalk for the player characters. And then we might have some encounters with creatures or NPCs that the players best be very careful with and maybe not engage in combat with. So Coco B says, describe what you're looking for. No roles for perception. I would say if somebody is talking about like, okay, so we're going to search the desk. We're going to search the wardrobe. I'm looking under the bed. things like that. Yes. So I don't tend to require my players to get super detailed. I mean, I don't have them get into the, okay, well, I'm opening the first drawer of the desk. No, it's just, just tell me you're searching the desk. Just tell me you're pulling all the blankets and everything off the bed so you can take a look at the mattress, and you're lifting up the mattress, take a peek, things like that. But yes, no rolling for just perception. It's like, oh, here you go. Also, no just simply rolling to disarm a trap. That is something else that you will see in old school adventures, where the player doesn't necessarily have to go through a whole big, like laundry list of things they're doing with the trap. But normally what would happen in an old school adventure is the trap is going to be described as far as what are the mechanisms that activate the trap, or what happens when the trap is sprung. You don't necessarily see that in newer adventures anymore. You'll see where it's just like, okay, well, the trap does this. And then, of course, if the player character, the thief, or somebody who has a thief skill or what have you, if they roll disarm trap, then bing, that's it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how the trap is activated. That is not old school. So this is Winter's Daughter. This is for Dolmenwood. It was originally just for Old School Essentials. Now it is for Dolmenwood. This is from Necrotic Gnome and Exalted Funeral. And this is a great example of an old school style adventure. Because what you're looking at here are keyed locations that are going to give you information about that keyed spot. Something that an old school style adventure is going to be missing is going to be like a lot of read aloud. There's very little to no read aloud in old school adventure. Now, I don't mind if there is. In fact, I'm fine with a paragraph if it's describing what the player characters see, maybe what they smell, what they sense, things like that. Whereas, we see nowadays adventures where it's a page and a half or 2 pages of read aloud. It's like, what? You expect me to read this whole thing to my players? Why shouldn't they just bust out an audiobook then? Dirk Krieger says that they just ran their group through Winter's Daughter. Could be done in a single session. Might take 2. Depends on your group. Also would depend on the length of your sessions. So a lot of people play, old school Renaissance games. Our sessions tend to be longer than people who play like D&D. So people are playing like 5e D&D. They don't mind if they get together and, their session is 3 hours, and that includes, taking little breaks here and there and having snacks and things along those lines. Whereas many of us who have been in the hobby for a long time, we're sitting there going, 3 hours? Is it even worth my time to run this? We're only going to get together for 3 hours. So something else that you'll find with an old school style adventure is there are no plot lines. Now, there are situations, there are NPCs who have wants and desires, but there is not some sort of through line where you'll have, okay, well, whatever the player characters do doesn't matter because this is going to happen, which is going to lead to this, which will lead to that. That's not something that you would normally see in an old school adventure. We would see set pieces, we would see locations, we would see a lot of interactivity going on in adventures as well, So I talk about it all the time. I love adventures that provide the players with risk and reward, right? So they just know in their bones, if they stick their hand inside that open gargoyle's mouth, something's gonna happen. But you gotta do it, right? It's that right shiny cherry red button that says don't push, and you're like, I gotta push it. I love that. I dig that a ton. Let's see. Ravenclaw's with us in chat. So is J-Man. Welcome to you both. Good to see you once again. Ravenclaw says some of the original old school D&D modules had a ton of descriptive text and read alouds as well. Oh, yeah. Oh, I am not saying that they didn't. But that's why you may have kind of popped in a little bit later. We're not necessarily talking about like original D&D adventures. We're not talking necessarily about modules. What we are talking about is an old school mentality to adventure design. Because yes, there are first edition, second edition D&D adventures where it's sort of like, seriously? It's about like, look at the Dragonlance adventures that the vast majority of gamers did not like. I gotta be honest, I've never read them because you already know I was long gone from D&D by that point. I was thoroughly enmeshed in Call of Cthulhu. But a lot of times I've heard from people who played through the Dragonlance adventures that the players almost felt like they were NPCs in the main story, and that whatever they did really didn't have any sort of impact on the outcome of the adventure. So something else you don't tend to see, at least I'm not aware of it, with an old school styled adventure, you're not going to see those like meta plots. Like if you'll have a series of adventures, you're not going to have some real big overarching meta plot that is going to take place no matter what. That you don't tend to see. Just like, for an example of a meta plot, both editions of Torg, which is currently for years now, it's been with Ulysses Spiel. I dig the premise. I think the premise is cool. I like the different cosms and the alien takeover and stuff like that. I can't stand the meta plot where it's like, no matter what your players are going to do, these things are going to take place to move the meta plot along. That was something that the World of Darkness role-playing games did a lot with the meta plots. So that's not something you would see with an old school styled adventure. Pete Strakulich says, old school requires you role play your way out of danger with your mind rather than the options on your character sheet. Yes, that is a given and that's just old school role playing games as well, where it's not the character sheet. It's player skill, not character sheets that drive the action. Age of Adventure says, so you can't be a rogue thief in an old school adventure? Of course you can. There's no advantage regarding traps compared to other characters? Sure there are. If you're a thief character. So taking a look at just about any retro clone that's built off of D&D, your thief characters all have thief skills that no one else has. Or if you've got a lot of different classes, maybe some have some access to. But yeah, there's always an advantage to disarming traps, climbing walls, a lot of times with reading scrolls, ancient languages, things like that. Some games give thieves a skill percentage of that. So Ollie Sykes also points out, usually some gonzo elements, no grimdark check completely unfathomable from Jason Schultes. Yeah, that's pretty gonzo. But I will say you don't necessarily need gonzo for old school. You might have more weirdness and whimsy. I don't know. Some people have different definitions of gonzo than I do. To me, a lot of the Dungeon Crawl Classics adventures are kind of gonzo, not crazy way out there. And others are pretty straightforward, like Sailors on a Starless Sea. That's not necessarily really gonzo. I think some of the gonzo elements for Dungeon Crawl Classics come by way of the magic and the tables and stuff like that, and the spell burn and the spell corruption, things like that. So Age of Adventure is asking, what are some examples of the advantages you would get as a rogue thief regarding traps? Well, you would have an opportunity to disarm it. Other characters normally will not have that skill set to disarm it. I mean, it all depends on the game you're playing, too. Ravenclaw says, I've been writing some sessions in the Shadow Dark fashion, and I really like the brevity of room and scene descriptions. That is also something we see with, for the most part, old school essentials, especially if it's, and Dolmen would, of course, especially if it's being published by Necrotic Gnome and Exalted Funeral. All right, so here's an example of Buried in the Bahamas, which is from Limithron. This is for Pirate Borg. And Pirate Borg tends to utilize a very hex crawl-ish sort of system. And this is also a great example of, okay, so here's a keyed location. This is what you're going to find. And this is what, you know, the NPCs are up to. Take it away. So old school adventures, you're not going to see a lot of, okay, maybe I shouldn't say it that way. Okay. With old school adventures, you tend to have opportunities with just about any encounter that could turn to combat for resolving the situation without combat. Not always. Of course, there are some, you know, monsters and animals that just don't have any intelligence. You know, they're just, you know, mindless eating machines, things like that. Yes. Something like that, you're probably not going to have a lot of opportunities to like parlay with the creature. Now, you may be able to throw food at it to distract it and get around it. That is very, very possible. But you don't tend to run into a lot of encounters where it's like, oh, you open the door and these things are in the room and they attack. Oh, okay. In the next room you go into, you walk on in and these things are in there and they attack. Oh, that is horrible, horrible adventure design. But as you can see here, we've got examples of just key locations on this island telling us, you know, what is this place? What NPCs, what monsters might you find here? Things that you could do in this location. But it's not telling you what the players are going to be doing. Another sign of really poor adventure design is when the writer sits there and they, you know, they sit, especially when they're doing the, you know, the read aloud, and they're telling the player characters what they're doing. As you do this, really? Nobody said they were going to do that. As you go through the bureau drawers, nobody said they were doing that. Or like you, oh, you feel sadness as you hear the, no, don't tell the players what their characters are doing, what their characters are feeling. Doesn't work. So Ollie Sykes says, love them some Pirate Borg. It's the least fussy of the boards. Rulebook's actually very readable. Yes, It's my favorite of the boards. I talk about it all the time. I should have my review of Down Among the Dead hopefully out by Monday. Fingers crossed. I am still trying to get my review of Adventures Dark and Deep's core book out first. But as you can see, old school adventures tend to be right to the point. Not a lot of fluff. You don't tend to encounter big, long, detailed breakdowns of locations telling you what they used to be used for hundreds of years ago, although it hasn't been used for that in 300 years, and your player characters would never know what the hell they are. Right? It's like, So there's still some discussion about, well, what do thieves get that nobody else gets? It's sort of like, what do clerics get? Clerics get spells to heal people. Other characters don't tend to get that unless they're like a paladin. So Mark Hawkswell's with us tonight. Welcome aboard. Good to see you again. All right, so that's a peek at just a few different adventures that I consider to be old school, not necessarily old school revival, although each of these does really use some mechanics. Although Shadow Dark, I don't consider to be OSR. I think it's got an old school mindset, but it's not really OSR. But all three of these adventures I have reviewed, and they do have a lot of the key tenets to the old school style of gameplay. So we'll swing back over here. Some other stuff with an old school styled adventure that I always like. And whenever I have to review a modern adventure that just ignores all of this stuff, it just kind of, I don't want to say it frosts my ass, but I just think to myself, how can people enjoy this at the game table? You know? So let's say, here's an example, like you're in a dungeon, and old school style adventures tend to have more keyed locations on the maps because not every keyed location has something going on. So let's say you are in some castle, some abandoned castle that's all run down and everything. You're going to be going through rooms that served a purpose. Maybe it was a bedroom and it's all rotten furniture and clothing, and umpteen people have been through there ahead of you. So nothing's left that's of any value. As opposed to like a modern adventure, it's you may go into a dungeon and it's got like 10 locations, 10 keyed spots, and every single one of them has something going on. And a lot of times, old adventures and new adventures ignored like dungeon ecology. It's always been something that's been one thing that I always keep an eye out on, because I like to have a dungeon make sense. So it's like, oh, well, there's this big bad monster. And then right next door are these orcs. And they don't know that the others exist. What? You're like, what? So something else that will be a tenet of like old school adventures is that every monster is not just sitting around waiting to be killed on sight. A lot of modern games, a lot of modern adventures, and of course we're mainly talking fantasy here. But a lot of times I'll be looking at like a third-party 5e adventure or something like that, and it's like, are you kidding me? It's like these things are not serving any purpose in this game world other than to be butchered by the player characters. A lot of times, old school styled adventures, now, yeah, sure, those creatures are still going to be murdered by the player characters, but they're in the middle of doing something when the adventurers discover them. They might be sitting around playing knucklebones and gambling or drunk and, not very alert. Or they may be ransacking a room that the player characters enter. Normally you will see that in old school styled adventure where the NPCs, the creatures, regardless if, there's going to be combat or not, maybe you'll have opportunities to parlay or bribe your way past something else that a lot of modern players don't understand. It's like, oh, okay, well, they're intelligent monsters. Okay, well, I guess we better kill them. Because in newer styled adventures or modern styled adventures, the encounters are balanced. So you've got the balanced encounters. So the players know that the encounter has been built so that it'll make it maybe a little challenging for them, but they're all going to survive the encounter. Where old school, that's not the case. Old school adventures love to throw things at the players where it's like, well, you tangle with this, you're all probably going to take a dirt nap. Birdman Dan Webb has popped on and said, yeah, dungeons must make sense. So I was never a fan of adventures like Tomb of Horrors. And I know for some folks, it's like, wow, that is a real classic. Not for me. To me, it's just it's a funhouse dungeon is what people like to call those, where really nothing is tied together with anything else, where it's sort of like, oh, okay, well, we went to that room. Now let's go to the next room. It's like, oh, okay. The other thing I've never liked about Tomb of Horrors is it always came across as an adventure where it's like, well, I'm the dungeon master. It's me versus the players. And of course, that was a thing back in the day for a lot of dungeon masters out there, including the people who created the game. I kind of get the impression, I don't know for certain, but I have kind of heard, like whispers that Gary Gygax could be very confrontational as a dungeon master, where it was him versus the players. I'm not into that kind of sort of thing. Something else that I pointed out, I'm going to kind of get into a little more detail about an old school styled adventure, is it's all about situations and encounters that are laid out in front of the players for them to decide what they're going to do to approach that challenge that they're facing. I always love that. And you should have a multitude of ways to resolve the situation in a good adventure, Jeff. I've been, Ravenclaw says, when I created old school adventures, I like to pre-roll random encounters and their reactions for room locations. I am with you on pre-rolling random encounters. I am all for that. Anything that there's nothing wrong with you sitting there looking at a table of random encounters and saying, oh, hey, that would be cool. I bet you that'd be fun. Really? 6 sturges? Snore. No. Hey, okay, all right. And then picking and choosing what you want, and then have those kind of loaded. And when you roll that 1 in 6 or 1 in 10, 1 in 8, whatever, that's going to activate that random encounter, you're good to go. And you're already sitting there because your creative juices are flowing, because you already thought, hey, you know what? That sounds kind of cool. I could see that encounter going off, and Oh, yeah. As opposed to being like, okay, hold on, everybody. Okay. Roll 12-sided die. A were-tiger. Okay. What's a were-tiger doing on the 3rd level of this dungeon? Okay, whatever. Peter Rackledge says, my game group would have TPK'd if one player didn't convince them to wear the enemy cult robes. It took convincing to do that? It's like a given. Has no one seen Conan the Barbarian? Or any other movie where people disguise themselves as the bad guys to sneak in? All these new players want is cantrips and skills with proficiency bonuses, never utilizing their greatest utility, their minds. Ollie Sykes says, Arden Vool for the win. Yeah, if you can afford it. That is a pricey mega dungeon. Maybe we'll talk about mega dungeons next week. Ready for this? I don't understand their appeal. Because in reality, well, maybe we won't do a topic because I'm going to kind of, deflate that right now. I don't know of anyone who's ever finished either running or playing in a mega dungeon. Now, I'm not saying they aren't cool. And I'm not saying don't buy them because, if it's 20 levels, you can always be like, yeah, there's 3 levels in this. I'm going to kit bash this. Oh, yeah, hell yeah. But as far as a big, massive, 600-page mega dungeon, like I said, I don't know anybody. And because it's at a certain point, the player characters, actually, maybe it's more like at a certain point, the players, probably even the game master, kind of want something a little different. And it's really tough with a mega dungeon. Now, I'm not saying a campaign setting with different dungeons. No, of course, because then you can, throw things in, change things up all the time. But if it's this kind of constant loop of player characters go in, okay, well, now we're on the 4th level. We got to resupply, make our way back up, go into town, stuff like that. And then, of course, usually gets to the point mega dungeons will have places within it for the player characters to restock and stuff like that. Dan Webb says they like using mega dungeons for kit bashing, like I said. Burrow Maze, Pete's Draculich points out. And we have Sedated Man with us again, says Stonehell Dungeon is great. Oh, yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to tell people don't buy a mega dungeon. All I'm saying is I don't know anyone who has ever finished one. Now, I'm not talking about something that's like 6 levels. I'm talking about these massive mega dungeons, which are like the Arden Vools out there, where it's sort of like, Ravenclaw says, best example of a mega dungeon was the Lost City, but that was more an underground city. The Lost City also left a lot on the shoulders of the GM. If you really wanted to get the most out of it, the game master was, I guess we should say dungeon master in this case, really had to invest a lot because remember, you get to a certain point and there's supposed to be more levels. It's just up to the dungeon master to make them before they get to the weird god thing. Although I think the Lost City is a great adventure. I probably would not approach it. Well, maybe I would. Maybe I'd try to approach it as like a short campaign and make it kind of a mega dungeon. Sedated Man says they're hoping to finish a mega dungeon before they die. Yeah, because a lot of times now, back in the day, yeah, I could see plenty of people finishing up a mega dungeon. Like when I was in high school and I was playing Call of Cthulhu with Elliot and Ed and Paul multiple times a week during the summer. And then even when school rolled back around, we were still playing like at least once, maybe twice on the weekend. And we got through Massive Nyarlathotep. Now, they didn't go through every single thing in the original box set, but quite a lot of it. We got through that in 6 months. And nowadays, I would say for your average gaming group, even just the box set, I'm not talking about the 2-volume set, which is fantastic, by the way, from my friends over at Chaosium Inc. Just the original box set with the booklets would probably take a few years to get through, because most game groups, maybe you get together once a week. More often than not, it's, for most people out there, it's every couple of weeks, and you get together and you play for like 3 hours. Maybe if you're lucky, you get 4 out of it. And that takes a long time to get through a campaign. Hell, I'm running Time to Harvest, and it's been 4 sessions, and we're just getting into the 3rd chapter, and it's kind of designed for 1 chapter per session ish, because it was originally an organized play campaign that's been kind of expanded out a little bit. Pete Recklich asks, is the Caverns of Thracia considered mega dungeon? I don't think so. I think it's considered dungeon. Although the Caverns of Thracia, if your player characters are going to be pretty much tackling everything in it, if we're talking about the release from Goodman Games that came out that I will review, I promise you, I will be reviewing it. It's kind of funny as far as reviews go. I know I'm kind of all over the place tonight, but hey, it's Thursday. It's like my Friday. We tend to just kind of kick back on Thursdays. I tend to be a little sillier. I mean, not like I'm an idiot silly. No. If it's something that was sent by a reviewer, or I should say by a publisher for me to review, this damn Asian lady beetle flying around is really distracting me. Anyway, I was about to say that, usually Thursdays we're kind of just hanging out, shooting the shit, chewing the fat for the most part. But if it's something that a publisher is sent for review, I focus on that more so than if it's something that one of you out there has sent me or provided the funds for me to pick up to do a review of. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to get a review. It's just more on the back burner. And I'm about halfway through the Caverns of Thracia. It's 4.5e from Goodman Games. So I do not have the Dungeon Crawl Classics version, which is okay. Sometimes in the winter, Castle White Rock and Die Meta Dungeon sounds super cool. White Rock at 30 levels might be one of those unfinishable ones, though. I don't know. As far as Die, I didn't really care for Die RPG. So I don't know what, as far as the meta dungeon goes. I know it's a popular comic series or series of graphic novels or whatever. Just the setting itself, the premise of the game just doesn't do it for me. where it's, I don't necessarily want to role play as people who have emotional issues playing a role playing game with characters that have other emotional issues. It's like, should I just go to therapy then? I know there are people out there who are like, man, they really like it. And the book itself, production quality, really nice. I've got it. Just not my bag of tricks. Castle White Rock, I don't think is going to clock in at that many pages though. So even though it's a meta dungeon, or mega dungeon, I should say. I don't think it's going to be one that you can't finish it. Just like Kobold Press has Harrowing Doom as part of the Mega Dungeon month that's going on over at Backer Kit, if I remember correctly. I don't think that would be a Mega Dungeon that you're never going to complete. So the reality is, I don't even know if the finished products you would actually term as mega dungeons either. But still, to me, a mega dungeon is something like Ardenvool. So that's a great example of a mega dungeon. The 2-part 5e D&D Mad Mage, that is a mega dungeon. Now, granted, you're probably looking about maybe 400 pages total, maybe a little more than that. But yeah, that is a mega dungeon. There is tons going on in that. So, I don't know. Like I said, I got nothing against mega dungeons. A lot of them look really cool. I just don't think there are very many people who actually finish playing a mega dungeon. And I got to be honest, I don't think most of them get a lot of playtesting either. I can't say that for sure, but Gunder Holfen qualifies, thinks Sedated Man. I think you're right. I think that's also would be considered a mega dungeon. What was the one that came up in chat earlier? What is it? Is it Unfathomable Underground? Something like that? That is not a mega dungeon. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on. Ollie Sykes says, Rapid Ethuk is quite doable, influences a lot in the wider world of the Lost Lands 2. Oh, that's a big ass book that's got, I think it's got a few like modules to it or chapters to it. There you go. Well, Completely Unfathomable is both the releases together, right? We were talking Gonzo before. That is Gonzo. Anyway, one last thing about the old school style of adventures that I always like is I'll kind of go into a little more detail because I kind of touched on this before. I like the emergent play. And, just because a module is old, like it's an old D&D module from like first edition AD&D or basic expert, second edition AD&D, doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. Because there was a lot of crap there too, right? There's always been crap in the role-playing game hobby. But one of the things that most of those had, especially earlier on, is the fact that it was just, hey, this is the situation. This is what the player characters are encountering in this place, in this keyed locale, in this room. And this is what they see. These are the important things that the game master needs to know about. Knock yourself out. Always like that. And something that you would see with stuff that didn't have preordained story points, I guess I would say. And that the game master doesn't have to worry about making sure that they hit every story beat. All different things could happen. So let's use, and this, isn't this, I think this came out, what, 3rd edition D&D? There you go. So Pete Strakulich is asking about Scarlet Citadel. I was just about to talk about the Sunless Citadel. Is Scarlet Citadel a mega dungeon? I wouldn't consider it to be, no. I just think it's a dungeon adventure. I got to be honest, I didn't really care. It was okay. I reviewed it. But no, that's not a mega dungeon. It's just a dungeon adventure. Because it's not huge. If I remember right, there might be 3 levels. And that does have more kind of a modern vibe to the design of the dungeon, where it's not, when you look at the dungeon map, there aren't like 30 keyed locales on a level. It's like 10. So yes, Ollie Sykes says completely unfathomable is a hoot. It does look like it would be fun. I wish I get to play some of this stuff. I never do. The only time I get to play anything is if I go to a con and I get into a con game. Ollie Sykes says they have a lot more play, which makes them more fun and playful. Linear games are far less entertaining in general. I think it has a lot to do with the genre. So like a wide open horror role-playing adventure isn't going to, like, at least in my opinion, it's not going to effectively provide the thrills and chills that I aim for. But then again, that's a horror game, not a fantasy role-playing game or a space opera science fiction sort of game. So I would expect different things out of those adventures. But yeah, I always loved how with the older adventures like Sunless Citadel, right? So you got Meepo the Kobold. And now we're talking, this is, if I remember correctly, it is 3rd edition D&D. You're looking at the player characters can kill Meepo like any other kobold, whatever. Hey, look at the sleeping kobold here. Kill him. Or they can capture Meepo and make him lead them through the citadel. They can try to befriend Meepo. And everybody's experience with an adventure is going to be a little bit different because the players are going to make different decisions to resolve the various different challenges that are put in their way. And each game master is going to be different with this sort of challenges that they put in the way of the player characters. So with the emergent play, at least in my opinion, a lot of times you have more memorable experiences. Because for one, the players feel like, hey, you know what? It's my decisions that are being made that are moving this along. And they can tell. Players can tell when a game master is reacting to what they're doing as opposed to sitting there trying to figure out, how can I get these people back on track so he can hit that story point before it's time for me to go home tonight? Sometimes in the Winter says, His Majesty the Worm system concept is a build your own mega dungeon. Isn't 4 Against Darkness, at least the early releases of that, isn't that kind of along those lines as well? Anyway, but I think, to me, the things I enjoy most about an adventure that's got an old school mindset is that practically anything can happen. Things aren't set in stone. So even like the big bad, can I roll in a reaction roll for the big bad? And well, holy cow. He actually likes the adventurers. Okay, now what are we going to do? I mean, that could happen. I mean, probably wouldn't, but still. Ali Sykes says 4AD is not mega dungeons. They tend to be fairly quick. Oh, okay. I did not review it. I think Sammy was the one who reviewed 4 Against Darkness. Although there's a new edition of it out. Yes. I think that company's out of like Czechoslovakia or Bulgaria or something like that. So I don't know about maybe trying to get a review copy of that. Ravenclaw asks, what is the cutoff for room numbers to be considered a mega dungeon? I don't know if that's really something that comes into play. I think it's more about how long are the player characters going, or the game master going to, I guess, going to be involved with it? Kind of makes it the mega dungeon. So, you know, if it's a location where the player characters are going to be having to like resupply and stuff like that, like a lot, I would think that's probably something that goes into the mix as far as, is this a mega dungeon? I don't know. Like I said, I think for the most part, mega dungeons, if you want to say your dungeon is a mega dungeon, well, then it's a mega dungeon. I think that's how it kind of boils down to it. But, you know, like I was just talking about Sunless Citadel. That's not a mega dungeon. There's a lot going on in it. There's a few levels to it. But I think mega dungeons are supposed to be designed to be a campaign in itself. That it's designed, rather than being your Greyhawk, the dungeon becomes your Greyhawk. That is your setting. Ollie Sykes says, 4 Against Darkness is super fun. The new edition's really clean. Should do something about solo RPGs, Jeff. Could be a good live stream chat. I don't really have a lot of experience with solitaire role-playing games. One thing I'm not excited by are like journaling games, which like Captain's Log, Star Trek Captain's Log from Modiphius Entertainment. That's what that is. It's, you know, I mean, it's well done, but it's a journaling game. And I'm like, yeah, what can I tell you? All right. So that is it for this time out. Hopefully people have a better idea of what kind of sets an old school styled adventure apart from like a modern adventure style. And it doesn't have to be an old adventure to fit into that, because we were just looking at stuff that is very recent, very modern. Okay, maybe not necessarily Winter's Daughter to start off with, but I mean, it's from like the last 10 years. So it's not like something has to be from the late 70s, early 80s for it to be like old school themed. No, not at all. But so we'll wrap up our old school week with that. Anyway, if you're watching live, thank you very much. If you watch live and took part in chat, tip the cap to you, because not only are you keeping me company, you're also keeping each other company as I'm doing the news or pontificating about a topic or watching the brief intermission, having a laugh from that. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you for taking time out to watch any of the videos here on the Gaming Gang channel. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great weekend. I will be back again on Tuesday. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, be sure to select all notifications, because that way, not only will you be informed, hopefully, when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central, right here on YouTube. It'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as the upcoming reviews that I've got cooking for this weekend. Well, probably tomorrow and Monday is when you're going to see them. As well as other reviews, such as my recent one of the Blade Runner Replicant Rebellion sourcebook from Free League Publishing. Yeah. All right, everybody. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very kindly for watching. And as always, I certainly hope each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.